The Diary of Dr. X, Episode 14. Why Economic Democracy Will Create Jobs. The idea that the protection of the environment will involve a loss of jobs is a common misconception. The reason being that so few people actually know what the creation of an ecologically sustainable economy really means. What it means is the recreation of an economic democracy, such as we used to have back when we had free markets a few decades ago. And a large percentage of the population actually owned their own businesses, especially in the agricultural sector, such as the farm I grew up on. And why don't people know this? The reason is simple. The policies recommended by ecological economics are never mentioned by the CCCP media. You see, the same class of people who benefit the most from destructive patterns of overconsumption and centralized planning also own the transnational corporations, which in turn control the corporate media. And they don't want you to know what people like myself have to say, preferring instead to spread misinformation beneficial to themselves and their own bottom line. After all, the implementation of ecological economics is a threat to the bottom line of massive centrally planned transnational conglomerates, centrally planned in the same way in which the Soviet Union was centrally planned, as I've mentioned. To them, truly sustainable economic policies are blacklisted. They represent a competing ideology which, if actually adopted as policy, would challenge their very right to exist. This is because radical ecology, as we are called, is not just a supplement to traditional economic thinking, but rather a scientific replacement for it. You see, we need a science to deal with these issues rather than a religion. Economics, as I've mentioned, doesn't qualify as a science. It is a corporate-sponsored religion that categorizes human preferences and affixes a dollar value to them. But human preferences are a subjective matter, while science deals with objective facts, right? I think we can agree on that. As I've mentioned, my hero E.F. Schumacher identified four main reasons for the destructiveness of capitalist technology, which he called the four unecological trends in its patterns of economic development. This was back in the 1970s. The first is towards increases in the size or scale of economic organization, what I have called CCCP tendencies. This is ecologically destructive not only because the size and scale of production facilities are increased, but the scale of interventions into nature are as well. Importantly, managers also become ever further removed from any direct knowledge of the ecological and social consequences of their decisions. All they can be expected to see is the bottom line, statistics. They have no direct knowledge, which means knowledge that you actually see for yourself personally at all of the consequences of their decisions. Many have never even visited the production facilities that they control. All they see is numbers. They have no direct knowledge of most of what is going on in the vast organization they supposedly are managing. The second and third trends, which Schumacher identified, are towards increases in the complexity of the technologies employed and towards increases in the specialized knowledge which is required to build and operate it. These both make it more difficult for smaller firms to compete. Slowly, smaller producers are put out of business, which leads to a net loss of jobs, not to their creation, as the corporate media would have you believe. Repeats that infinitely. Finally, the fourth trend is towards increasing violence, especially ecological violence in terms of pollution and overconsumption, but also against workers. All of these have always accompanied centralized patterns of economic development. But let's not forget the destruction of free enterprise, nor of the hearts, minds, and bodies of individual workers through mechanization as well, which Schumacher also emphasized. As a solution, Schumacher proposed the development of what he called an intermediate technology. If transnational technology is a $1,000 technology, he said, and tribal technology is a $1 technology, then the intermediate or ecologically appropriate technology he proposed would be a $100 technology. It would make use of the best of modern knowledge and science and engineering ingenuity to create a smaller scale, ecologically less destructive alternative to corporate production distribution systems, something that was consistent with decentralized, smaller scale, regional organization and ownership. Four principles, as I've mentioned, were proposed to guide the development of more ecological patterns of economic production. They are pretty much the polar opposite of current patterns promoted by centralized planners. 1. Production should be decentralized to the greatest degree possible. 2. Technology should be relatively cheap so everyone can afford them and so production facilities could be produced in the large numbers necessary on a decentralized production strategy. 3. The technology, marketing, and organization should not require great amounts of specialized knowledge. And 4. Production should be from local materials for local use to the greatest degree possible in order to increase ecological efficiency. It is apparent from the first three that ecological economics involves the creation of a vast amount of jobs. Anyone who knows anything about economics knows that small businesses using human scale technologies, or ecologically appropriate technologies as Schumacher called them, are more labor intensive. Many small independent businesses also require more managers and, very importantly, more owners. The latter is also important. You see, CCCP planning is not only destructive ecologically and environmentally, but also anti-democratic and inequitable. The most important point ecologically is the fact that the last one, regarding the importance of local and regional self-sufficiency. Again, ecological economics defines efficiency scientifically, not in terms of religion. In other words, in terms of saving energy and materials. Its primary goal is not maximizing profits over the short term, but optimizing production over the long term. That's what the concept of sustainability and sustainable productivity is all about, despite what you hear in the CCCP media. It should be evident that green economics is about more than creating a clean and sustainable future. Or, in fact, creating a possible future. It is also about rescuing our free market system from centralized planning. In other words, it is about what I call economic democracy, or recreating a system in which everyone has a better chance of actually owning their own business, rather than working for the corporate elite. And that is what I had always assumed the free enterprise system was all about, at least when we used to have one.